29. Do you ever think you can take over the universe and improve it? I do not believe it can be done. The universe is sacred. You cannot improve it. If you try to change it, you will ruin it. If you try to hold it, you will lose it. So sometimes things are ahead and sometimes they are behind. Sometimes breathing is hard, sometimes it comes easily. Sometimes there is strength and sometimes weakness. Sometimes one is up and sometimes down. Therefore, the sage avoids extremes, excesses, and complacency. Oh, hello there. I didn't see you guys come in. How about that right there? The Tao Te Ching, written by good old Lao Tzu. Sometimes one is up and sometimes down. Good news to start the show on there. Just grabbed it off the shelf. Now I have nowhere to put it. We're joined by Dan Eve, the Crypto Raptor, and Josh from Voltoro. How's it going, Dan?
Think of the babies. It's going great, thanks. And yourself, sir?
It's going good. Another Monday morning. We're back here. Josh, how's it going?
Howdy ho!
Welcome to the show. We've got we're taking your phone calls this morning. We're still not quite there on the technical side. We did test it this morning. I couldn't hear Josh through the phone. Somehow they say they can hear my microphone, which makes no sense technically and does not make this easier to test. But if you want to give us a call, you can give us a call right now at 518-600-1949, or you can call on Skype at World Crypto Network, all one word. Give us a thumbs up and a share. Let's get some people watching. And while you're getting ready to call, let's talk about today's news. Let's see what's going on. Price of Bitcoin was down. Everyone was down about it. I watched a bunch of shows yesterday and they all told me after the fact, they told me the next day, they're like, oh yeah, Bitcoin crashed yesterday. And I was like, that would have been good to know yesterday or maybe even the day before. But I found out the day after. I also found out the day after that there's a possible recovery with the price rising to 38.22. But let's see what's going on everywhere else. Where's my Bitcoin average? Here it is. The price of Bitcoin was up 2.29% in the last 24 hours, with a last of 3,852, a high of 3,861, and a low of 3,767. That's $1 for 25,868 Satoshis. Still a really good deal. But we're looking at it right now. Maybe even a possible recovery. Yesterday, they were looking at this and they were saying, no, I don't see a recovery. No, I don't see a recovery. And now they're like, I see a recovery. But before that, they said it was going to trade sideways. And always, I'm a short-term bearish and long-term bullish. Isn't that right, Dan?
Oh, hell yeah. Yeah, I am really worried about this hyperwave thing, though, because aren't they calling 1,800 or sub 1,800?
Oh, no, they want 1,000. They want 1,000. And
geez.
I should get my video up. I wasn't prepared to share it, and I don't know if I could do the sound. Everything is up and down here. This software sometimes works. But I have that great old Mad Bitcoins video where I talk about Bitcoin breaking 1,000. And I think the hyperwaves would really like that because they do have an idea where they kept tweeting throughout the run up to 4152. So they are consistent. And when it went down right now, they're kind of taking credit for it. But Josh, what do you think? Can I bow you over with a hyperwave, or are you still standing on the shores?
You know, I'm a big fan of looking at all-time lows and seeing that all the all-time lows are just going up and up and up. So there's no point looking at these all-time highs, like you can see on my screen. They just blow everything out of proportion. You can't really tell anything from anything. But yeah, like you, man, long-time bull. I'm just fully bullish, all the ways, perma bull. And if it's down, it's a good time to buy.
So look at that peak though, man. I just think about the fact that in December, if you're anything like me, you sat there with the graph looking like that and thought, yeah, this will continue. And it's lunacy,
right? It's lunacy, and you get you're like, no, new paradigm. There's way more on ramps now. There's like everything's changing. But look,
but the addresses are up.
Yeah, I mean, really, what it comes down to is that you cannot mathematically have a parabolic graph going for very long, because if it kept on going like this, we would be at $1 million within the next, I don't know, at the time where it was 19,666, there it probably would have taken, another week and it would be $1 million, because it just, if it's doubling every day, it gets crazy.
And that's why it was so hard to sell. If only we'd waited another week. If only we'd waited another week. Oh, we could have paid off all our debts. Oh, we could have paid off all of it. And then it turns out, no, there was a point to sell. There was a top. We did go over it, but maybe we'll go back to it. They're mentioning altcoins in the chat. I wanted to bring up some altcoins. Go ahead, Dan. What were you going to say?
I was just going to say, like, the most simple strategy that I've got now, that my take on, or take home from the last bull run, is that as soon as it gets, the chart looks like I wouldn't ski down it, then it's time to sell. And I probably would have sold a little early, but I definitely wouldn't have held all the way back down to here. That's for sure. So
it was a long fall. But we are seeing some action in the altcoins. Ethereum up 0.3, Ripple up almost 4%, EOS up 3%, Litecoin up 4.5%, something called Bcash up 4.8%, still at $139. Not impressive. Tether, $1.01. That's a good deal. Stellar up 2.6% to 8 cents. Tron up 4.5%, and Binance Coin sneaking into the top 10, at least by coin market cap, up 1.25%. What do you think? Anything good in this? Is this just more altcoin madness?
Well, like if you're not, what's it, a Bitcoin extremist, and you kind of think alt's a fair game, then this is obviously, Bitcoin going kind of sideways is usually good news, because it means that alts have a bit of time to break out in between the the movements. But I mean, Ethereum's done really good from it was like $85 or something the other week, and it peaked at 165. So there's some good games there.
That's very true. And remember, Andreas Antonopoulos told us not to ignore altcoins. He wrote a book about Ethereum, smashing all of the dreams and hopes of the Bitcoin maximalists or extremists or supremacists or I don't know, utilitarianists or whatever the new name is going to be. But you can tell right here, they all kind of follow the price graph of Bitcoin. You see Bitcoin go up. You see all the altcoins go down, all of them except for this one called Tether. This Tether altcoin seems to match up with a different kind of coin than Bitcoin. So everything else, though, Bitcoin SV, that's a pretty unnatural reaction compared to the rest of the chart. So somebody bought up Bitcoin SV. It's up 11%. Looking at everything else, pretty much an up and a down, and then a recovery based upon, I presume, how many buyers there are out there. How many buyers are like, ooh, there's a sale on Ripple. So I'd say that there are more buyers looking for sales on Ripple, Litecoin, Bitcoin Cash, especially this crazy Bitcoin SV, than anything else. So if you want to know where the speculators are, at least looking at these charts, that's where the speculators are. So go take their money, and remember, they might take yours as well.
So Bitcoin Cash is now that's ABC, right? Is that right?
That's right.
The original Bitcoin Cash. Bitcoin SV is Bitcoin Cash 2 or whatever.
Bitcoin SV is the original Bitcoin Cash.
And
I've got some ETH Classic for you. I can get you some.
I've got a great. Do you know what Prosecco is?
It's like
cheap
champagne.
Yeah.
Sure.
So like, I can't remember. Oh, Nindy says it a lot, but I don't know if it was in the credit to him if it is them that came up with it. But he said that Bcash is Prosecco is Bcash to Bitcoin champagne.
It's like champagne cash.
Champagne.
Yeah.
In fact, well, it's actually more like Lambrini or something. Prosecco is a bit.
And it's got more sham than pain. Or a bit of both.
We've got news. Warren Buffett says Bitcoin is a delusion and attracts charlatans. He sees no unique value in the world's largest cryptocurrency. Previously, he said that it was rat poison. People didn't like that. Then he said rat poison squared. Of course, the rats that it kills are the bankers. Ha 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 ha. So, what do you guys think? Josh, Warren Buffett doesn't like Bitcoin.
Yeah, I mean it's interesting because he's obviously a very intelligent person, but he's one of these people that I just don't think has ever had his pulse on the internet and what it means to be on the internet, and what it really confuses me actually, because this is someone that is obviously extremely intelligent, extremely financial literate. I mean, you can't get more literate than this guy in terms of financial literacy, or reading balance sheets at least. And so when he says stuff like that, I just don't understand how he can be so cognitively dissonant to himself and not understand the value of the only ever true scarce thing that has ever happened on this planet, this true finite thing, apart from yourself, like Josh. There'll only ever be one Josh, but really there isn't really anything else that there's a true finite thing, and enable it to be money and transferable over the world. There's not really anything like it. So, and the fact that it acts like money, I could understand if you said blockchain is rat poison, blockchain is a charlatan, people that push that, because how many times a day do you need to use an immutable database that no one can shut down? Probably not very often. And how many times do you need to use money? Well, all the time. Where does Visa and MasterCard have most of their value from? Every online transaction ever, apart from PayPal. So the amount of value that is available, and I just don't understand why Warren Buffett doesn't see this. It makes me feel like it's similar to JP Morgan, where they say one thing and in the other hand they're slowly buying or something.
I think this has to be the case where the old man just doesn't get it. He's been in the game a long time and he's not hip to this new Bitcoin. He did have several big losses recently. He didn't pick up more Apple when it was down. Of course, neither did I. Who cares about picking up an individual stock if the whole market's going? And at the same time, he bought a bunch of this Kraft Heinz stock before they imploded. So he's made some very bad moves. Berkshire Hathaway, they had a tweet the other day that said Max Kaiser and Bitcoin has slaughtered Berkshire Hathaway since they called out Bitcoin at like, I don't know, $5 or something. All you had to do was listen to Max Kaiser. You could have made a fortune. But Dan, what do you think about Warren Buffett, the old man of Wall Street?
Fuck him. No, sorry. Like the end of the day, I'm probably going out on a bit of a limb here, and I'm not saying that he's not a clever guy and he's not good at like picking stocks and doing his thing or whatever. But at the end of the day, like there reaches a point where you're senior and or your seniority in terms of the company that you're working with, his investment company gets information that other people don't. I'm not saying there's insider trading, although that could, well, screw it, I'm over the pond, I could probably say that anyway. But I just think that once you are rubbing shoulders with the people in the companies that are making these decisions that are going to affect share prices, it probably gets a lot easier, let's just say. I don't know. The other thing is that he hasn't really ever liked tech stocks from what I heard. I don't think he like never bought sort of Apple or Google and that back in the day. And so it just seems like, yeah, he's you know, not really a tech guy. He's, you know, just sounds like a bit of a granddad who would find it difficult using a phone, to be honest. So I don't really care about what he says in terms of Bitcoin, because it's just stupid. And at the end of the day, anyone who's definitely anyone who's non-technical, who has a negative opinion of Bitcoin, it doesn't even doesn't even register with me, because in order to really have arguments against Bitcoin, you need to understand the technology. And if they don't understand the technology, then their opinion isn't worth anything.
Well, and it's important, once again, to surround yourself with advisors, especially when you get older. These advisors should be younger than you. Then the advisors can say to you, maybe you shouldn't say anything about Bitcoin. Maybe you shouldn't talk about this topic that you don't know anything about, such and such. It's going to happen to everyone. And apparently he thought it wasn't going to happen to him, and that his genius was just going to roll on forever, which is also another obvious and easy mistake to avoid. You don't want to stay too long at the table. Let's see. More Warren Buffett remains clueless about Bitcoin, calls it delusional. CCN calling Buffett out in the headlines. Ooh. Bitcoin is more than a speculative asset to people in Venezuela. People are actually using Bitcoin. They're holding it. I guess it was good for them when it went up. They got a rough wake up when it flipped back down. Who knows? I mean, this really could raise them out of poverty if they happen to be holding and Bitcoin does go into another bull run, or it could wreck them again. I've heard reports from people on the ground. People have called into this show telling us about Venezuela. His specific complaint is that he didn't like Dash, and that a bunch of his friends had been talked into buying Dash and they lost all their money. Sadly, though, the same thing could happen to Bitcoin. If they bought Bitcoin at 4,100 and it's at 3,800 right now, they would be wrecked as well. But Josh, what do you think? Is Bitcoin finally taking off? Do we have a real world example where people can get access to it and use it to escape their country and their country's currency, which is dying?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, if you bought Bitcoin in January 2018 at its highs with Bolivar, you would still be up. The Bolivar has lost so much value that it's even lost more value than Bitcoin during that time. So I don't think you can go too wrong. Of course, I'm not saying that's a great thing to want to compete with the Bolivar, but really, if we cannot make cryptocurrency work in Venezuela, then I don't think we can make it really work anywhere. So, and I do believe it'll work. It's just a matter of now getting the right tools and making people feel comfortable. And I think money is something where people are very suspicious about money. I mean, there's a huge learning curve, right? We've been taught over generations now that the state makes the money, and we trust what that money is, and it's got some heads of famous politicians usually on this money, and politicians of this land, and my shopkeeper will accept it for some chicken. And by saying, hang on, this is some funny computer code that's this blockchain thing, and there's all these competing people saying dashes here and there, and use all these different competing digital currencies, it's very, very difficult for the normal person to trust that. But I think as time moves forward, as we start seeing more and more celebrities jumping on board, and maybe family members actually doing not well out of it, but at least holding their value. And I got to say that this sideways movement, even though we're slightly going down with Bitcoin at the moment, we're seeing little pumps. That, in compared to the absolute heaven, it's total stability. So I'm hoping that people will start of this notion that money has to be created by the state to be trusted, and I don't see that not happening. I really see that happening, especially when the new generations connect generations.
Well, I hope so, Joss, and that's certainly a optimistic vision. But you have to imagine what it would be like to be in one of these countries and for something like Dash to roll in. Because remember, we always talk about Bitcoin and how Bitcoin doesn't have any marketing money. And when someone does a conference about Bitcoin, they're probably going to break even, or maybe, just make back their money, something like that. No one's out there marketing Bitcoin. No one's advertising Bitcoin. But with Dash, they could roll in, get a deal with Burger King, buy you, I don't know, 10 Burger King meals. You could ride your bike back and forth to Burger King for a week, eating like a king, a Burger King. But then if Dash plummets, suddenly it's all over, right? And you can't even afford a Whopper. You had to go back to Whopper Jr. You had to go back to, even smaller Whopper. So I do think it's a risk when they do that and they go in and market. But once again, it shows their power because they really do have teams of people. They really do have people sitting around on a couch getting paid to think of fun slogans for selling Dash. People making flyers for Dash. People making, and I'm not just picking on Dash here. I think the same thing about Litecoin or Ethereum or anything that's not really money that's masquerading as money. And it's great. You can use it temporarily as a unit of currency, and it'll work for a little while, but it won't work at scale.
So what would you think to someone if someone suggested putting governance into Bitcoin so that there could be Bitcoin funds for pushing Bitcoin?
It's very difficult to understand Bitcoin governance because there is no governance, and that's what all of philosophy is. The truth is knowing that you know nothing. So the beauty is no one's in charge. And that's absolutely terrifying to some people. And it's like chaos, craziness, madness. But no, we need no one to be in charge. The fact that there is anyone in charge at Litecoin or Ethereum or Decred or any of these other things is part of the problem. So yeah, no.
I mean, I do like the fact that I do like the concept of a blockchain not only paying miners but paying into some sort of DAO that distributes funds for things like marketing. I do like the idea. I don't see there's anything inherently wrong with it, but it's definitely a fascinating idea. But Bitcoin, I also agree totally with Thomas, is that you have this beauty in the chaos. This because out of chaos comes order every time, and especially if you have people so fascinated by a topic, people that get tattoos of this thing because they're so passionate, and this creates a lot of dialogue, and we've seen Bitcoin go through thick and thin and still survive. I mean, the whole block size debate was so intense and so drawn out, yet here we are. There has been a resolution. It has taken a while. It wasn't done in back doors, neatly and tidy with a nice PR movement to show the outcome. But instead, all the screaming matches that are usually done in back doors have been done in the open.
And look at the 2X movement, the 2X fork. All of these businessmen got together in New York City and they had the NYA, the New York Agreement, and they all agreed that Bitcoin should have twice as much block space for no reason. They're like, well, we had a meeting and we were like, well, we agreed at the meeting that we should have twice as much block space, so we're going to have it. And everybody on the internet looked around to each other and they said, well, I'm not sure we need twice as much block space for no reason. The SegWit fork just went in, or the soft fork of SegWit, and it upgraded the block space a little by moving things around. And that's working out for us. And over there on the, I don't know what wing it is, but on the smaller block wing, we got Luke Dash Jr. still arguing for even smaller blocks. So I don't know if we should just 2X it all of a sudden. So everyone got their Twitter handles together, and we did the UASF Twitter handle. Then we did the No2X Twitter handle. And all together we said, hey, we don't want this thing. And I remember at the Breaking Bitcoin conference in Paris, that everyone in their slides, independently of each other, not connected, not part of a protest movement or a political thing, all the programmers, all the smart people that made presentations, they all put a slide in where they're like, by the way, no 2x. And we're like, yeah, all right, you know. And suddenly people had made a couple of hats and they made stickers and they handed them out for free at the conference. And we were like, okay, so it's not just me at home saying that maybe we shouldn't just double Bitcoin's block size for no reason. And that's part of the thing about Bitcoin is, remember, Ethereum could have been on Bitcoin. Vitalik came to the Bitcoin people and he said, hey, if you add a couple of things here and subtract a couple, hey, you know, we could be compatible. We could make a smart contracts thing on Bitcoin. We could make it really fast. And they said no. They said, no, Bitcoin has its own purpose. It has its own function. We don't need to weigh it down with more smart contracts. And this is, you know, debatable and all that. But to go back to what Josh was saying, you can have a neat idea now, like Ethereum or Zcash or Decred or I don't know, even Litecoin or Stellar or whatever. These are all technically interesting ideas, right? And they have unique problems they want to solve and they talk about them and they get people excited. Like Josh said, they get tattoos and everything. They're way into it. But now these unique ideas are blown up with millions and sometimes even billions of dollars, which again, if you blow up a bubble, you can always pop a bubble and you could always decrease a bubble and it can always woo goes right back out. So it's strange to see us doing this with money and with these experiments and this irrational exuberance, this crazy excitement that Vitalik and people that Vitalik knows and other people that they know should be making hedge funds and should be making massive token funds and token systems and token this and that. I think it all just, it smacks as another bubble and another madness. But maybe it's necessary. Maybe blowing up this bubble gets us all the other bubbles, gets us to Bitcoin, all those things. A lot of people are always calling in saying, you know, what kind of crazy altcoin brought them to Bitcoin, or how they lost money on BitConnect, or they lost money on this or that. And that brought them to Bitcoin. So it was worth it for them.
OneCoin. It was fantastic. OneCoin. You know? Oh my God.
OneCoin actually, they did real world physical marketing. I remember Krista Rose and Junseth, they went to that meeting and had the secret camera, the secret recording, where the guy said, I know it in my knower. That you should buy this OneCoin and you should put $10,000 in it. The CEO is going to double your OneCoin by November.
Was that Dr. Zeus?
Dr. Zaya, something like that.
I know it in my knower.
I know it in my knower.
It sounds very Dr. Zeus.
But yeah, it was all happening. There's been tons of these scams, ups and downs, and some of them aren't scams. They're like an interesting idea that's been pumped up out of proportion.
Look, with the no 2x thing, you know, I got contacted very early on, before SegWit had been initialized and gotten through, and I got asked to sign the no 2x form, and I was one of the few that was pushing for a double block size if we could get SegWit in, because I felt like there had been almost 4 years of infighting. We'd come to this stalemate in the community where there was so much hatred and so much vitriol against each other. We'd separated as a community, literally. And I felt like, look, if we can't do one or the other, let's just do both. Let's just do both. Get two sides. But then, after signing that, what happened was that I started getting more and more details coming through about the deal, which was, oh, by the way, the fork will have a new GitHub repository, which won't be controlled by the core team anymore. By the way, we, you know, and there was all these extras in there. And then on top of that, we had SegWit then come in. And then to kick it all off, Bitcoin Cash forked off. So it was like okay, well, we don't need 2x now. And I was really, really worried that 2x would go through because we just didn't need it. And it seemed like this extra fork that just didn't need to happen. And funnily enough, I had a dream one night where it was a nightmare where Bitcoin forked to 2x and the whole thing collapsed because they had this thing in there where it was when you made a transaction, it didn't mirror in the same thing, so you'd have to be really careful. And anyway, it was quite annoying. I can't remember all the details now, but it was very confusing, I should say, not annoying, for the normal user. And I thought, oh no, this can't happen. And I started penning this letter as soon as I woke up, and penning this letter to the group saying, look, we've got to drop 2x. It was coming up close to doing it. And all of a sudden, there's this news. I thought I'll check the news first, and there's this big news: no 2x. 2x has been dropped. I was like, woohoo! Thank God, because I think that could have been a real spanner in the works.
It was pretty amazing when they dropped it and changed their mind, and it really showed the powers of the users. And so Dan was asking for a governance system for Bitcoin, and it kind of comes down to, if you think it's really bad and the scientists think it's really bad and everyone else thinks it's really bad, and they're all willing to do something about it. When I Google search for no 2x right here, I see all these graphics and all these memes about Bitcoin, about no 2x, all these like, here's a mug. You can get a no 2x mug. SegWit 2x, it's a trap. Get out of New York agreement free right here. Community chest, Bitcoin group, all this other stuff. People really cared about this enough that they enacted Bitcoin's governance system. And we all stood up and we said, no, we don't want 2x. And especially what we didn't want is what Josh was talking about there, is changing the repository over to the control of the New York agreement. That would have been a totally different Bitcoin. And as we saw, because they, despite saying no to 2x, they released their code anyway. Their code crashed a couple of weeks later, and that would have been Bitcoin's code crashing if they hadn't have said no to 2x and changed their mind. It's pretty neat right here. I was talking about how they made stickers. Here's one of the stickers right here on my laptop. Ha ha ha. So pretty cool at Breaking Bitcoin. It's the third image for no 2x. Pretty funny.
All right, go Thomas.
Yeah. All right, so I'm in there. But yeah, it was some good times with a no 2x. Let's see what else we got. Okay, so they're talking about the price here popping higher. Bitcoin went into free fall. Long-term Bitcoin price indicator turns bearish, suggesting the bottom may be in. Ooh. So there it is, more analysis from the chart readers. Bitcoin transactions are steadily growing at January 2018 level. So like Dan said before, if you're excited about transactions, more people are using Bitcoin. Of course, last time it was more spammers using Bitcoin because they had that neat trick where they were mining so much of the Bitcoin that they got a certain percent of the spam back. So it was worth it to send the spam. Once that got messed up by SegWit and they didn't have the same kind of control, the spam attacks stopped. It was very strange. And suddenly we didn't have such a problem with too many transactions. But these might be real transactions. And they say Roger Ver is still shilling ICOs like it's 2017. So not a flattering Photoshop here of Roger with the thug life and the chains and the dollar bills. I guess it's dollar cash. Let's see. He's teaming up with Live and Pay from Australia. Cryptocurrency legend, the first investor in Bitcoin startups.
Times are hard for Bcash, man. Needs to get those funds some way.
Times are hard. Poor Roger. So many people question whether Roger lost his money, whether he lost his keys or he sent it to someone or he's being blackmailed. Who knows? But apparently he just likes shilling things. He likes getting free money. I don't know what it is, but he's promoting some new ICO. So way to go, Roger. We've got Fidelity taking the lightning torch. What do you guys think about Fidelity? And what do you think about the lightning torch in general? Go ahead, Dan.
I think it's awesome. I've actually got Adam Back's profile on refresh at the moment, because I think he's waiting to get it from someone else in the US. So as soon as he confirms he's got it, I'm going to whack my invoice there, and hopefully I can get on the tail end. I just think it's a really cool kind of little thing that's been put together by Hodlernaut, and it's kind of brought a bit of excitement to the sphere about Lightning, and about about how the fact that it's a very rapidly growing network. I think as well, we've just literally hit 30,000 over 30,000 channels, about 3,200 nodes. Now, obviously, people are a bit uppity about the fact that things like tipping bot and these Lightning custodial services, but I still think there's definitely a good reason to be using these custodial wallets for just small change. You wouldn't put your entire life savings in your wallet every day, or carry all the gold in a sack on your back. So having these little custodial wallets for things like tipping and other services, I think I think it's an allowable kind of thing, and it doesn't I don't think it goes against Bitcoin too much, because there's a size fits all. Is that my smoke alarm battery?
Oh, yes, it is. Everyone at home wants to tell you about it too.
Yeah,
they're looking around for it. But okay, so unpacking what Dan said. All right, the lightning torch. I like it. It's fine. It's okay. It's cute. It got a little out of control when it got to I don't know if it's gotten to Elon Musk yet, but it got to Jack from Twitter and became kind of a celebrity affair. And now it's gotten to Fidelity. I'm glad that you want it, Dan. I kind of don't want it. I think it's a hot potato. I don't want the stress or the pressure of having to do it right. I don't really know how to use Lightning right now, and I don't want to screw it up, especially screwing up the Lightning torch. So I don't want that. But I think it's nice, and it's cute that they're putting people on t-shirts and stuff. It's a good community thing. It came out of nowhere too. I like that. I think that's a good start. On the second thing, I have historically been against custodial tipping solutions, and I will remain to be against custodial tipping solutions. I like half of it, right? Because this is slightly better than ChangeTip. I always said ChangeTip could be a great education tool for Bitcoin, but instead it was mainly a spam tool. This thing is also showing a great amount of being a spam tool. You've just been tipped 5 cents, and you can get it at this link. That's spam. So it's bad to do that. I don't think that's good. And then holding it in a centralized wallet, you're not really using Bitcoin. You're not really using Lightning. They could just use an internal database, which is what ChangeTip did. It's a little more interesting. This one has a mode where it can show you a QR code. So I think that's good. That's like lip service. That's half of what you need. And then when you actually send the tip, like when I send it on Twitter, it's not actually going to use even Lightning, because as cheap as Lightning is, it's even cheaper to do it in a database, although then you're managing user funds, and then you've gone down a whole dark path. But you're already managing user keys, which are the same as user funds. So I still don't see much good in these tipping services. Everyone's excited about it again. I just think it's false. It's not actually using it, and it doesn't actually teach it. They could design the bot so it would teach you. It could be like, here is my address. Here is my QR code. This is what a QR code is. This is what an address is. But instead, it teaches you to type something like, send $1 at tipbot from here. That's it. So no, still not a fan of tipping things, but trying to stay quiet and polite about it. This is a tip bot written by an individual person. He's a programmer. They haven't given him $8 million to burn in a giant bonfire yet. But when they do, I imagine there'll be an incredible bonfire, and you may even be able to see it from space. The bonfire will surely be nothing compared to the lightning torch, though. What do you think, Josh, about the lightning torch? And do you like custodial tipping services?
I mean, I think there's something there for them. I don't mind them. I do think that people needs. So
I don't know the power of the internet. Is Josh's audio coming through for Dan? Tell us at home.
No, it's a bit choppy.
Sorry, Josh, you're having some internet problems. Maybe try turning it off and on again. Maybe you should use the Lightning Network. Maybe he's using custodial internet access. But yeah, we'll try to figure out. Maybe Josh is downloading too much. I don't know. They say Bitcoin has a Florida problem. No one seems to know what to do about Bitcoin. Is it a payment? Is it money? Is it not money? I don't know. This doesn't seem like a very interesting article, but I like the thing about Florida. I thought that would be fun because, you know, Florida man and all the trouble that he gets into. What do you think, Dan? How can Bitcoin get down to the common people? How can it be understood by normal people?
I don't think it can. The analogy of or the fact that it's kind of analogous to the internet and like TCP/IP. I think that people will only really be like the world will only be using it when they don't know they're using it. So when it's used, it's powering things in the background. And let's face it, in order for people to use it, it needs to be like as unfiddly as possible. And things are slightly fiddly still at the moment with Bitcoin, especially if, we're in the expectation that people are going to download, a Qt wallet and run a node and kind of manage it that way, manage their money that way. So I don't see that happening certainly in the near future. And I think that it's quite a huge leap for people to, take their money as they've known it and the trust or lack of trust anyway that they have in the banks, and move that all into Bitcoin without really fearing it, because it's something that I still fear now. All the tiny bags that I do have left that got ravaged by the great bear market of 2018. Even when I'm sending small payments, I still freak out sometimes. I'm like, oh man, what if I send it to the wrong address? And otherwise I've, got to sell this coin here and, move money around. So I do think there's still some barriers to entry, but I think that, as the UIs are improving and usability is improving, it's getting more people kind of involved and helping change that mindset. And I also think that things like Lightning Network, it was the torch is a fun thing. It's like it just seemed like a fun thing people are getting involved in, and I think this the more kind of real world use cases that drag the people, drag the non-crypto, the no coiners in, the more of those, the better. So onwards, upwards.
Yeah, I remember. Hopefully my audio is better now. I've gone hardwire.
Oh,
yeah, hardwire. You can't beat it. But actually, I don't mind custodial wallets. I think there's always a place for them in this space, because until we have true peer-to-peer, easy to use, grandma-proof stuff, which is there. It is there. It's definitely coming. And people should focus on it. I think there is a way. There should be a way to do non-custodial Twitter tipping. To Thomas's point about tipping, though, I do agree. I think the culture is wrong. I think it's terrible to tip someone 0.00005 of a cent, like not even a cent. It's like me going up to a busker and going, wow, that was awesome. Here's a cent, and throw it in the bush next to him. Like, and making him, scrounge around in the dirt, by trying to find this 1 cent, trying to hold the last little bit of dignity that he's got. I mean, it's a ludicrous way to try to promote Bitcoin. If you're going to tip someone, guys, come on, tip them $1, tip them 50 cents. Don't sit there tipping them. It's literally so little that. And actually, what the problem was in Change Tip back in the day was that if you tried to withdraw that Bitcoin, you just couldn't, because there was just dust. It wouldn't even cover the transaction fee. So And I think this is the same for Lightning, right? After a while, how are you meant to close that channel if you've only got the tiniest of microns of dust in your wallet? You can't. I mean,
Oh, come on,
hopefully
Josh.
you won't
You
need
could
to.
tip over 10 people with those microns. You could each get 1,000 microns. No, I totally agree. I saw the HODLNut guy, shout out to him on Twitter. He started the Lightning Torch, and he said he described it. He was like, I started a wallet, I got a node, I set up my channels, I opened my channels, I connected my applications. He's like, I did all this stuff, and then 10 people sent me tips worth 20 cents. Like, thanks, guys. Like, together, it was 20 cents. Combined, a combined 20 cents. So, yeah, it can be frustrating with the tipping. And even now with the donations, we turn this on again. Oh, we got a donation already. Thanks to donor 0.00365784. And look, Dan, I can even use Tallycoin without having a custodial Lightning wallet to take all those huge Lightning tips.
So have you got Lightning set up?
No, I haven't.
Oh, geez.
Making fun of you.
Oh, geez. Come on, Warren Buffett. Step out of the dark ages.
Not even Lightning. You just want me to go to some web page and set up some accounts so that I can collect, like Josh is saying, so I can get all your penny shavings off the floor. It's like I'm collecting penny shavings today. It's like I'm gonna pay my bills in penny shavings.
There you go. Yeah, but as General Byzantine says, it's 2 cents now. It's a lap dance in 2 years.
There you go. But unfortunately, I think you need the lap dance now. Like, that's the problem, right? Is that you can't. I can't pay my rent 2 years from now. But yeah, he says, oh, you could get my own Lightning node wallet and don't close it. So there's the chat.
But yeah, the torch thing is really cool. Like I really love the Lightning Torch. And actually, I had this idea years ago when Bitcoin was still in the a few hundred, that we should be doing something that gets the Guinness Book of Records involved, because I'm pretty sure there's a world record here where money has traveled to most countries without losing any value or something like that, without losing any of the Satoshis. I mean, because if I was to do the same as what Lightning did with the original banking system, it just is impossible. So there's definitely a world record here.
Well, why a world record?
It's possible you'll just be left with nothing. Oh, sorry.
Well, no, nothing as well. But that's what I would say, Dan. I think we can raise money. That's the world record we should have went after. And there was a point where We Use Coins had basically like an endowment. And there was a point where the Bitcoin, what was it called? The Bitcoin Foundation, of course, they basically had an endowment of Bitcoin. Now, they didn't have the ability to do what General Byzantine says we should do in the chat. They should have saved up for their lap dance in 2 years. If the Bitcoin Foundation had saved their, let's say, 50,000 Bitcoin that they were burning every month or whatever it was, right? They could have saved that. If We Use Coins didn't store their Bitcoin on a hard drive and encrypt it and lose all the money, they could have done that. But what I argued for at the time, and I still argue for now, even as we're in a so-called bear market, still looks like it's up 3 times from 1,200. But of course, the hyperwaivers say we're going to 1,000. But we need to do this endowment. We should try to give media organizations or impartial groups, maybe a big multi-sig. Maybe we could get one of those Mistos wallets that's my friends build that are multi-sig. But it would be great if we had a group like the real Bitcoin Foundation, and they had 1,000 Bitcoins and they were handing them out. But then again, they tried to do that with the Bitcoin Foundation. I'm, of course, always arguing that there should be a group called the World Crypto Network, and they should make shows about Bitcoin. And if you like the shows about Bitcoin, that you could donate Bitcoin to them, and then they could make more shows about Bitcoin. Now, that's worked out to some degree. People are certainly making more shows about Bitcoin. That part of it's working, but maybe not the rest. What do you think, Dan? Should we have a big endowment? Can we time travel back and put 1,000 Bitcoin aside for media organization, put 1,000 aside for some government, put 1,000 aside for some marketing, whatever it is. We can just remember to do this later, and we'll time travel back at the end of the show.
So time travel back and hodl.
Yep, we can not only hodl, but we can direct the money. Like, let's say right now, let's say that we were.
We have lost Thomas, have we?
Now, he was an early miner. No, I think it's here. Josh, you're having internet problems.
No, I think you cut out then a second. I think.
Well, I'm on a hard line too. So, but yeah, no, they say set up a lightning node and they'll send you $20. It's always conditional. It's always like, do 1,000 shows and then set up a lightning node. And you can have $20. But no, I was just saying, even right now, like, let's say, okay, blah, 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 a Bitcoin is worth $1 million in the future. We should get some place where we lock up like a Bitcoin for media, and we lock up a Bitcoin for governance, and we lock up a Bitcoin for this. Then we should put some kind of a timer or a money/issue, and you would be able to just save the money and then spend it later on organization. Or if someone's already done this and they've already done the time preference weighting, like Pineapple or some early Bitcoiner, they could donate the money and still have money now, stuff like that. But I think that's the governance that you're looking for in Bitcoin. But I can also tell you why you're not going to get it. And I think this might get part of the show. It's too bad Max isn't here because he loves libertarian philosophy. Maybe Josh will have to stand in on the libertarian side. But I think the libertarians wouldn't give you the money, just in general. Let's start there. Dan, what do you think?
Oh, sorry, I was responding to a thing in the chat.
Chat will get
wouldn't get the money for your Bitcoin governance. Is that what you're saying, Thomas? He keeps on. Well, okay, so I think that's what he said. Oh,
yeah, sorry. Thomas. He was.
I mean, I think.
Yeah, it keeps on dropping out, Thomas, and it's definitely not me.
No, it's not me. Yeah, I think you need to upgrade your tech. You need to get Lightning. You need a better sound thing. Maybe a backup internet. Oh, he's off. He's completely off.
No, I have Windows.
Oh, nice. He's back.
I have it. I just reset some different things and closed some windows. But no, same question. Do you think they would would they give you money? Would they donate to things that aren't businesses?
Maybe if it's for the greater good. Surely.
Greater good, socialist. You lose. All right.
No, not from a socialist perspective. For the greater good of Bitcoin. I thought you were talking Bitcoin specifically.
Yeah, but I don't think that a libertarian or someone that believes that way would have those kind of feelings towards any kind of greater good, even the greater good of Bitcoin. See, I was trying to explain this the other day because people are calling me out on Twitter, right? Because on Twitter, like here on the World Crypto Network, I'm mainly here to talk about Bitcoin. We do a little bit of books at the beginning. I'll get off topic if you want to talk about baseball or Las Vegas or the Oakland A's or whatever you want to talk about. But mainly we're trying to stay on topic. Whereas Twitter, that's my Twitter, right? So if I want to say something political, I'm darn well gonna. So I found this presidential candidate, Terrence Yang. Andrew Yang. Sorry, Terrence is the guy I know. No, Andrew Yang, and he's running for president. Yang2020.com if you want to check him out. And his basic belief is that automation is coming, that we are going to wipe out truck drivers and we're going to wipe out cashiers in the next 5 years. And this is a big economic problem for us in the United States because all these people are going to be out of work. They're going to have nothing to do, and they're probably going to go around smashing the robots, causing more damage, or they're going to smash themselves or their family or their friends. There's going to be all kinds of collateral damage, all kinds of human damage from automation.
It's the Luddites 2.0.
It is. Well, it is, but we have a solution, right, Josh? We have a solution. The Luddite problem, the people smashing the machines in Vonnegut's Player Piano, his first book, which has been available for 50, 60 years. Anyone can go read it. But we have a solution: universal basic income. Andrew's got a great idea. He's calling it the freedom dividend, and that we already give away money in Alaska. They have oil money. So every person in Alaska gets $2,000 a year. Do whatever you want with it. What Andrew is saying, Mr. Yang, he's saying $1,000 a month. Do whatever you want with it. If you're a millionaire, you can claim it. If you're low income, you can claim it. If you're in the middle, you can claim it. You could claim it and give it to your church. You could give it to charity. Here's $1,200 a year. Not even that, $12,000 a year. Sorry. Do whatever you want with it. Universal basic income. Absolutely socialism, right? Everyone's crying out. So you're taking money from one group and you're redistributing it to another group. Completely true, which is the entire point of human intervention into anything. If you're intervening into anything, you're messing up the evolutionary results. You're making this group win instead of that group. You're putting your hand on the scale, right? The prime directive. You're violating it. So yes, I'm for violating the prime directive to make automation less damaging to the victims of automation, because we can do this with humanity, with goods and outcomes. I believe we can have a positive outcome without too much damage to the people who make the automation, who are going to see 1,000%, 100,000% gains in their efficiency. They're going to have to pay a little bit of that money, the offset, to not completely damage and ruin society. So there it is. I'm a total socialist and a communist. Josh, run me down. Take up the libertarian position. Tell me why we can't have basic income, even if automation is going to wreck whole parts of society.
Yeah, actually, I gave a whole talk about this at the Frankfurt School of Economics about a year ago, and my talk was called "Humans Need Not Apply," and it was basically outlining exactly what you said. The statistics that truck drivers and cars, the self-driving car is pretty much the first robot we will all own. And it'll happen very, very quickly. And the first ones will be truck drivers. And of course, they'll be not fired straight away. They'll be told to look after the truck, just sit there having cups of coffee while watching it, like on The Simpsons.
Oh, it's getting better. They're already proposing, the Silicon Valley guys, telepresence for the truck. So the truck drives itself from Wyoming to here. Then when you get to California, the human pops in, drives the truck the last mile. I mean, it's genius. It's totally solutions based. It solves a problem. But you can see obviously the downsides.
The downside, and there is a lot of downsides to robotics, because this is I think I read the statistic, like 6 million jobs are driver jobs in the US alone, and that's from taxi drivers to truck drivers to all sorts, right? So and it's coming. I mean, in say 10, 15 years, you will be named a terrorist if you want to drive your own car. So I think it's definitely coming, and it's coming fast. Now, what happens when robots do take all the jobs? How do we deal with this? And the problem with the universal basic income is that you have a single payer who's getting money from nowhere, printing it out of nowhere, and basically shelling it out to everyone. And now what happens when you have a lot of people that are basically getting fed by this invisible hand of the state, this centralized hand of the state?
Well, but let's slow down a little bit. I'm not sure that you're going to get all of your income that you need. I'd go back to more, what are you going to do when people have money? I think they're going to spend it. I think it's going to be good for the economy. I think everyone's going to benefit directly from the spending.
Sure, there could be. Let's definitely there could be. We're not sure, but what generally tends to happen is that when one centralized entity feeds you, you will, because that's where you're getting your main source of revenue from. You are willing to put on uniforms to protect it in whatever way possible, and it does become very dangerous. And you do end up, if something starts getting wobbly in that system, let's say it starts to inflate and the government needs to print more every year to everyone's minimum wage needs to go up a lot every year, and then more and more and more, and then it implodes in this huge hyperinflation where everyone realizes the money that the government's printing is worth nothing. Whereas, we have this thing called, and I hate to say it, the blockchain. It's this amazing new thing where we've realized we can have not a central government, but we have this strange digital organic, self-perpetuating, almost living digital organism in the cloud that pays humans to secure it. It is actually every 10 minutes it's minting new coinage to secure it by paying these people to turn on miners and get electricity and all the rest of it. So we've shown that we can derive value out of nothing in something that didn't have value. So I'm wondering, apart from the civil attack problem, and there's a few other problems, but if we can have an entity that isn't a centralized human-controlled entity, giving out a certain amount of newly minted currency using some sort of blockchain mechanic, I think it does sound like something that people should think about, because just putting your fingers in your ears and going la 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 la, socialism, la 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 la, capitalism, la 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 la, no problems here, robots, there'll always be jobs, is nonsense, because it's not like the Luddites anymore. These were simple machines that always messed up. They sort of grabbed aimlessly at the box on the conveyor belt, and nowadays we have full dexterous hands, we have eyes, we have robots that can do goddamn backflips, folks. They can do parkour now with robots. I mean, come on. They are getting good, very, very, very good, and they're cognitively connected. You can have a robot in two places at once. It's not even sort of tied to a geographical location. These things are far superior than us, and capitalism generally heads towards more and more getting more tight and faster, and taking out any sort of inefficiency. And the biggest inefficiencies are always human. So we are headed naturally towards a jobless obsolescence. And I think thinking about these solutions is extremely important.
Well, and I think you had a good point, Josh, where you said you can't just say capitalism or you can't just say socialism, and we can't just give up those ideas. Certainly, I'm talking about doing something. There's a big argument against that. There's the we should do nothing argument. We should just let it happen, blah, blah, blah. That's a perfectly valid and a fine argument we could go down. I, on the other hand, am saying there's going to be massive human suffering. We should attempt to do something. Other people are saying, oh, but you're taking the money from this and you're giving it to that. You're redistributing it. Well, that's what government is. That's what the government game is. And that's a discussion I think we're going to have on scale.
Yeah, on that point, the argument with the UBIs that or against it, that when people say you're taking someone's money and you're giving it to someone else, well, arguably, you're doing that for loads of stuff. I mean, how many specific services in the government are utterly useless, or are a complete waste of money, or haven't been run correctly, or the procurement process is balls, and so it's all handouts and handmes, backhands to different companies, and all these other problems that we do have. And that is also taking money and giving it to, giving it to other people, essentially, without, and you could say that that's stealing from you, because the money is not being spent responsibly. So I do think that, it's not just as clear cut as taking from someone and giving to someone else, because there are certain things that make the country run. And I think one thing that kind of people forget about is that, poverty does seem to be linked to crime for obvious reasons. If you remove poverty, then it seems logical that you'd reduce crime. And, people that aren't on UBI probably have crimes committed against them as well. So there is the kind of, not the greater good, but as a, what's the word? oh god, I hate using this term, but the holistic view. You know, if you take everything, everything around it, you know, you could say that you can pick out any bit of the government that's wrong and say that's crap and it's a waste of money and it's stealing from someone. But there's good kind of positives to this, and as you've also said about the 1,000, you know, from the certainly from the people with less money, that 1,000, you know, is going to be spent straight away. It's going to go straight back into the system, and it will be probably going on, you know, dare I say it, you know, a lot of stores that don't have billionaires maybe owning them. You know, there's going to be things like rent and stuff like that, or you know, so I think that it's good. It's kind of a good idea in that respect. But at the same time, you're also giving another 1,000 to someone who's a millionaire, whose money largely isn't going to go towards. I mean, if you're a billionaire, and I was thinking about this the other day. If you're a billionaire, your money probably rarely actually goes into the pockets of small businesses and small people. You know, you're largely going to be using very expensive services. You know, you'll be buying expensive cars, and that kind of money will just like, I don't know if someone's kind of,
no, I tend to disagree.
Leak out? Yeah.
I worked for one of Australia's richest men for a while, and he died, and his son took over his empire and decided to build a whole lot of casinos in Asia. Now, you know who got paid from all that money? Because the casinos eventually failed. They all failed. And he lost a lot of money through that. But this is the great equalizer of capitalism, that you just want to get, you know, more money. And sometimes you win, sometimes you fail. But during the building of all those casinos, the carpet layers, the brick layers, all those people and those small businesses building these casinos and building these places up, made money. And so I think it's, you know, yeah, maybe personally they'll have a, you know, the flashiest car and the flashiest watch and all this stuff, but generally speaking, they invest in businesses and they build businesses that then hire other small businesses to deliver certain things and do other things. But you know, I do see your point as well.
It's very difficult not to just go completely socialist, especially watching the Academy Awards last night and looking at some of these actresses. One of them had like a bauble on her wrist, and it was a series of jewels and diamonds, and they were strung together, and it's probably worth, I don't know, $50,000, $100,000. That's obscene, right? To me, at my level, that's obscene. Now, of course, you know, I've got like the Apple Watch. So that's completely obscene to a lot of people below that. That's a, you know, $500 watch or whatever it is. So there are levels to this. There is, it's, you know, do I think it's insane they have that crazy jewels? Yes. Does someone below me think that it's insane that I have an Apple Watch? Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. So it's very difficult to even start to open this kind of conversation, especially on the internet, when they're like, yeah, well, you could have taken that money and donated it, or, oh yeah, you could have done that. I mean, there's always something you could have done with the money. But yeah, it's interesting.
I mean, I don't know any billionaires though that are sitting on much cash. A lot of them are just buying businesses and buying things to that actually make more money. Billionaires generally, or even millionaires, they don't have money just sitting in banks. They don't have, but like their Dagobert or whatever his name was, the Disney character, where he's just got this huge vault of coins that he jumps into. And
Scrooge McDuck.
Scrooge McDuck, yeah, that's the one in English. Dagobert in German. Yeah, so
it's like what the hell? Dagobert.
Yeah, sorry. Dagobert. Yeah, so you know. But the other problem with UBI, which is an interesting problem, is that what happens is that we live in a global economy. So if you start to tax the businesses that for this UBI and not use newly printed money, then you end up taxing these businesses that are sitting in your country. Then they'll start moving overseas or somewhere else that doesn't have this scheme. And then the ones that are left have to pay more and more until they have to pay so much that they're just so angry. So that's a really tough tough thing. And you see things like this playing out in places like Gibraltar versus La Linea, which is right next door to Gibraltar. Now, Gibraltar is tax-free. You don't really, as a business, pay tax. Cigarettes are super cheap, and next door is amazingly poor. Like, it's just a wreck. Because if you have somewhere where there's a good place to have tax, no one wants to do business in the place where there is a lot of tax, and so that's another problem with UBI. So that's where I think
but in
as
the
well the blockchain
way that the American weapons of war have made the world safe for capitalism and democracy, I think we could make the world safe for basic income. I think we could have international interlocking treaties. And again, everyone's freaking out again, but this is how human beings organize themselves at large scales. And that, yes, I think we could have basic income for everybody, and that we could use the same level of protectionism we have for our open markets or our access to markets, our ability to sell textiles, and have that same level of, and again, this goes back to winners and losers and globalization and everything that we've kind of seen happen, even just since the 80s, NAFTA, international treaties, taking a factory in, Michigan, sending it to Thailand, making Thailand too rich, having it send it to a smaller island, making that smaller island too rich, having it send it to another smaller island, this battle to the bottom. We've seen it. What I'm arguing for here with basic income is establishing a bottom. How low can you go in capitalism? And we have the same thing, I think, and you're going to get horrified. Everyone's freaking out now. The AOC debate, this billionaires tax, or should we have billionaires? Should people be able to afford such a bauble as I saw last night at the Oscars? Should they have 10 of them? Should they have them just because from a family? Well, the Oscars ones are certainly rented, but at some point, somebody owns that stupid thing. Somebody commissioned it. Somebody paid for it to be made for someone else. Or at a profit, someone commissioned it for a reason. And they can afford it. And they can afford the Lamborghini that the Bitcoiners dream of. These luxury items wouldn't exist if there wasn't a market for them. And should we have a floor to capitalism? Should we have a ceiling to capitalism? Can we put any kind of controls at all on capitalism? I know some of you guys, very hardcore libertarians, no controls at all is what you're arguing for. Very difficult position to hold. A more pragmatic, a more flexible middle position might be easier to hold. Also, I want to invite everyone at home, though we do have one-way calling. What you can do is kind of call in and say your opinion, and then we'll talk about your opinion, and that might work. So if you want to give that a try, you can chip in, or you can talk to us in the chat. I had the chat up on screen here. Let me show you the chat. Jeremy was saying in the chat that he would love basic income because he would just retire and sit around and eat Cheetos. And I'm actually completely fine with that. I think that that's a fine use of basic income. The same way Dan was saying, well, a billionaire, he wouldn't care about his basic income. Maybe he just burns his $1,000 every month, or throws it into the pond or whatever. That's also fine. I think it's a very fair law when we say, I can have 1,000, you can have 1,000, people that need it can have 1,000, people that don't need it. I think that's, again, we're establishing a floor, which is also what, get horrified again, universal health care is about. That we're establishing a floor that's like, these basic things, like you shouldn't go to a factory and have your hands chopped off. That was the 1920s. Then we were like, we shouldn't have children get their hands chopped off. Okay, that's a good rule. In the 80s and 90s, we tried crazy things like, after you have a baby, maybe you should have some time off. Oh, that's crazy, right? Crazy talk. So these machines, these automation, all right. So we got a call. Hello, caller. You're live on the World Crypto Network. What's your name and where are you calling from?
Hi, Thomas. Jeff from Ohio.
Hey, Jeff. What's your thoughts on what we're talking about today? I know we've had a lot of topics today. So go ahead.
Yeah. So I understand the feeling about wanting universal basic income. I mean, I really who could not have that feeling for those of us, or those people who really struggle. Okay. However, I think sometimes we have to look to look to biology for some of the basic lessons and how we behave, because in the end we are all creatures, biological creatures. If you look to nature, nature's a very rough place. You do not see, you don't see within nature, you see animals eating each other, right? It's a very violent place. And I think humans do such. We've evolved into a civilized society, but we do so on paper. We eat each other on paper, basically. So, you know, the thinking about everybody should have a basic level of income, really aren't you saying then that whatever basic level that is, you're just devaluing money by that much, and what's going to happen then is people are going to feel like some of the social programs that we have now that are very helpful to people. I mean, irrespective of what people think, we do have a large amount of social programs in the States, which is good. We need that as a safety net for people. I think that serves as a basic level, but I think, in the end, life is competition, and nature teaches us that. And for those who are unable to compete, we have to rely on the social programs. We have to rely on family. I don't think we can do it with money. It'll just devalue the money. As the reason you're in Bitcoin is the same reason a lot of us are, is that devaluation of money is something we don't want to see. And I think that's what you end up getting when you have something like that. But I understand the feeling and the thought and the desire for it. I just really think in the end, it's sort of a violation of just nature, basically. I don't know if that makes any sense to you, but I've thought about it quite a bit. I mean, this isn't the first time this has come up.
Oh no, I'm with you, Jeff.
And if you did agree with that, then you'd have to say, well, Bitcoin shouldn't exist, because if we're saying, hey, we're going to give a basic level of income, well, that's money. I don't know any Bitcoiners are going to be giving up their Bitcoin voluntarily for something like that. Now, again, I think there's a lot of us, we get painted with a bad brush. We're just about for ourselves. So I don't agree with that. I think when you're in Bitcoin, I think you see the bigger picture. A sound,
Jeff, can you hear me?
Will help people. I think a lot of us have been down that road and feel that way. So I don't know what your thoughts. I mean, I know how you feel, but I just can't come to the same conclusion on universal basic income. But I don't disrespect your opinion. I just don't feel that it would work.
All right. Well, thanks so much for your call, Jeff. You can't hear the other panelists right now, so we're going to let you go. We're going to talk about what you said. Then maybe if you want, you could call back and share your opinion again. Thanks so much, Jeff.
All right.
And so Jeff was talking about what I think a lot of people think about, which is kind of a social Darwinist view of humanity, that life is a competition. There are winners and losers. And if we help people to survive, we're kind of messing with that. And that, yes, it is a noble impulse. We want to help people. We want to bring them up. Sometimes it works. Sometimes it doesn't work. Maybe we're better letting nature take its course. I heard an interesting and similar interpretation as Jeff's. Neil deGrasse Tyson was talking on the Joe Rogan show, and he said there's all these treaties in space, and one of the treaties is that humans won't kill each other in space. And Neil deGrasse Tyson thought they were putting a lot of pressure on space there because we can't even manage to not kill ourselves down here. And that maybe we should just have a higher standard where we should be, hey, Americans shouldn't kill other Americans. We could start there. Not to say it as a jingoistic, because I think we shouldn't kill people in general. But even if we could just say, hey, don't kill your fellow countrymen. But once again, we can't even do that. We can't even say, don't kill your fellow religion men, whatever it is, whatever group it is. So there is a lot of that. There is a lot about humans and about what we do, what we can't do. I agree with Jeff's point. I want it to get out there. But I also personally still think that we can help people with basic income, that we can do things with social programs. There are successes we can have, and that we can soften social Darwinism. We can have a floor in there. Maybe we need a ceiling to provide the floor. Josh, what do you think? I know you're chomping at the bit here. I wanted to get you to talk to Jeff, but we have that new technical problems to work on. But what do you think, Josh?
All good, all good. So the thing is, I don't think, everyone always goes on about UBI being the only option, but one of my first startups in the late 90s, 2000s was the world's first swap site where people swapped things. And I think once robotics comes into play, I think swapping and trading, bartering, or lending, or sharing, or using the same things and just having a pool of stuff that people use will also be a thing, right? So here, car sharing is super, super popular. I don't own a car because there's a ton of BMWs and Mercedes around, and it costs about the same if it's a short trip than a train ticket. And I can just jump in one that's around the corner from me, and you can park them anywhere, and you can park them in the sketchiest spots because you know that someone else is going to grab that car within minutes of you parking it. So I think sharing is also an interesting equation of part of that has something to say in this story. But yeah, I definitely agree with Jeff that the inflation problem is a problem, and we will see, if you're constantly pumping out newly created money rather than taxing, because that's how you get around the problem of taxing every business and driving them away from the country. But if you're thinking about a whole new paradigm where there just aren't any jobs at all, I say robots have taken every single one, including programmers. Robots are fixing robots.
That's definitely where I am, Josh. We can't underestimate. This is one of those generational problems, like the atomic bomb. What are we going to do with that? And we had the Cold War, and we had all this debate and discussion. We had all these treaties. We eventually figured out that we could have some bombs, but not shoot them off. UBI with the automation thing, automated trucks are going to wipe out not just some of the truck drivers, all of the truck drivers. And again, personally, I'm not a truck driver. I'm not directly affected by this. I'm not a cashier at this time. I'm not directly affected, but I have empathy for my fellow people.
Absolutely.
And even if you don't have empathy, if you just want to talk about dollars and cents, from the Vonnegut book, from Player and Piano, gangs of Luddites going around smashing the robots. We're not that far from that. People are smashing robots right now because they don't like robots, or it's fun, or it's a joke, or whatever. But when we really get down to it and you have a reason to hate the robots, it's going to be even easier than all the other reasons that they gave you to have a war, because you hate the other religion, or you hate the other race, or you hate the people from a foreign country, they speak foreign language. You can really, really, really tee up some hate for these robots.
I think personally that the job automation thing, I think it's going to be such a slow transition, and that and the jobs that we have now, that they've evolved so much. I mean, there's so many different roles that people can have now, so many different technologies, so many different new things that are being invented that require new people to manufacture, or to a different way of processing something. So I think that we're continuously creating new jobs, and I think maybe I'm as a my previous life as a business analyst, where I'm a bit more brutal about a few things. I'd go basically into certain areas and automate stuff, and the number of people that got really offended, weirdly, when I said, yo, this report that takes you 4 hours, I'm going to automate it and it's going to take 10 minutes, they would get pissed off, because one, it meant they can sit and scratch their ass and watch and read BBC for 4 hours, and two, because it was taking like a piece of them away. And unfortunately, I didn't really give a crap, because at the end of the day, I was making efficiencies, and that person's not going to lose their job. They're going to be doing something different. Now, in the case of things like Uber, for example, where people are losing their jobs, say compared to normal taxis, unfortunately, in a selfish way, Normal taxis are more expensive. They also rip me off more with so many meter issues. I'm not saying it's all of them, but unfortunately, it seems like Uber gives the better deal. It's more efficient. It costs less. There's better traceability. Why give up and hold back something, you know, that's got a positive impact because of the small number of people that it does negatively affect? And I think the same, you know, if I'm honest, with you know, drivers, I do think, unfortunately, you know, it is going to make this transition is going to make a lot of people have to think about their, you know, changing their career, but also, you know, having autonomous trucks. I can't see that really, you know, fully taking over for at least another 5 to 10 years. And the fact is that if autonomous vehicles become safer, then hell yeah, I want autonomous vehicles, because I want to be safer. Because every day I'm sat in traffic with absolute numpties who cannot drive whatsoever and put my life in danger because of ridiculous things. So it's sad that it will impact on people's livelihoods, but ultimately, if it's benefiting everyone in society, then yeah, I think, you know, we need to kind of push these things forward. From the UBI perspective, though, just very quickly, from the UBI perspective, it's difficult, you know, one, because it's such a big thing to actually change, because it impacts so many different people. You know, if you give people UBI, you've got to start thinking about the impact that's going to have on local businesses. What if someone who was earning less than the UBI now thinks, I don't need to go to work anymore, so I'm getting more than I was getting before? So then negatively, you know, there could be negative impact on businesses. It could make more people work. I don't know. It could generate new industries of new, crazy, weird things. But the fact is that it may have a greater good overall. It may not, and it's going to be something that's going to have to be tested very, very carefully if they do it, to see what the kind of right level is, what the right balance is between the amount that people are getting, what the, you know, the impact that's going to have on the rest of society. And yeah, it's going to be it's a hardcore, tough one.
Well, they say a lot of people that get the basic income, they start a business because they have the ability to try it without having to work another job. They have kind of a backup. They could always eat food. A lot of people also try to live out their dreams. If they had a business that was unprofitable, like tutoring people or helping people, they might do one of those, and then they can still eat because they have the basic income. Maybe they'll become a religious person. Maybe they'll do more study, something like that. But I think you nailed it earlier, Dan. I wanted to talk about it immediately. Cars are unsafe. Cars are unsafe. Therefore, we must automate cars immediately. It's not the same for cashiers. Cashiers waste my time. Checking out at the supermarket is a time unsafe, right? If we had little chips and everything, I'd drive it right across the thing. At the grocery store near me, this might horrify some of you. They have this system. They give you the scanner and they give you a bag, and you go around the store scanning stuff, putting it in your bag, and then, I don't know, they look at your stuff on the way out, and you get to leave faster because you can just pay and scan it. So again, I'm working for the grocery store now, scanning my own stuff, eliminating jobs. That's just convenience. This car thing has to happen. It is not safe. Josh might have been joking when he said, you'll be a terrorist if you want to drive your own car. But in a world of computer driving cars, a human being with all the terrible decisions that we are capable of making would be like a terrorist. Imagine all the cars moving like network packets. They're all perfectly spaced from each other. They're going zoom, 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 zoom. They know where they're going in advance. They're working together, right? They're sharing destinations, which is another horrifying. It's horrifying for privacy, right? Everyone knows that you're going to the mall and they're going to the mall and we're going to the mall together because it's more efficient for the road. We've made an efficiency choice over a privacy choice. You put one human being in there and he wants to go to Disneyland, and he's going to cut across 6 lanes randomly because the exit's coming up and it's only 5 minutes away and he's got to do it. And he can't just circle around. This is not a logical robot where he's like, oh, I missed the turn, I'm going to take an extra 10 minutes and circle out. This is a human. He'll turn it. You will go across the roads. This has to happen. This automation. We're having trouble with the legal issues. There's this whole, should the robots be designed to save the driver? Should be the robots designed to save the people on the street or in the other cars or whatever? You know the example I'm talking about. We're going to have to get through that because this thing has got to get done, which means all the truckers, all the drivers, all the Uber, all the Lyft, all those people, the taxi drivers who still have those, bus drivers, eventually train drivers. Trains can be automated in the same way that we're talking about, especially with that last mile telepresence idea. That's a great idea. It's going to happen. So the real thing is, are we going to provide a safety net, something to catch these people, or are we not? And yes, it does come down to what Jeff was saying on the call, a bit of social Darwinism there. Like Kirk said, let these people die, let them die. But I also had that idea a little while ago while we were talking, and I wanted to share this with you guys. I always kind of imagine that we're in Star Trek: The Next Generation. And imagine how nice it is. Everyone has their colored uniforms and they're all perfect spandex. They're very fit. They all have their own rooms. They all have the food machine in their room, makes any kind of food they want. Absolute, no scarcity. Do whatever you want. Academic pursuits. They kind of make it seem like you could do anything you want. You could study anything you want, but we don't see many couch potatoes in Star Trek, people doing nothing. But it kind of seems like there's that world, and then there's this world of the refugees and all the normal people, and that's kind of the zombie movie, right? The zombie movies, I've told you this before, but they used to be about capitalism. They're about the malls and the brain dead consumers in the 50s, but now it's become a metaphor for immigration. The zombies are the people that live other places, and they don't have the good things that, let's say, the people in Star Trek: The Next Generation have. And they have the one person per room, and it's very orderly, and it's very, everything's fine. What would Next Generation do if they had to deal with, 5,000 or 50,000 refugees? And we've seen it several times. They pick them up and they drive them around for a while, and then they drop them off somewhere on a planet. And some of the people don't want to go, and they force them to go. And sometimes the planet doesn't want them to be there, but they force them to work together, or they suggest that it'll be in their thing. And there's a lot of strong arming in Star Trek, but somehow they maintain that one person per room, one food machine per room. That seems like a nice base standard of living that we could provide with all of the wealth that we have, and that we could just try it out. And I know everyone's saying, oh, if you give them $1,000 a month, then it's going to cause the housing prices to rise, and you have to give them $2,000 a month, and you have to give them more. And that's a slippery slope. We could talk about that at that point. Do we need socialized housing like we need socialized medical care? It's more about, for me, it's not so much about socialized, and we get into all that. It's about efficiencies. What's the efficient way to raise humans? And again, I've read Ayn Rand. If you want any efficiency, she'll go full slippery slope on you, and suddenly you're living in numbered beds in Anthem and all that kind of thing. Yeah. So I know where we can go with this, but still, I've read all of the horrifying tales, and I think there's just as a big a horrifying tale as we do nothing. They automate all the trucks. Yang2020.com doesn't get elected. And then there is no basic income, and there is no safety net. And all these truckers, they're not just going to smash the robots in like fun gangs. They're going to smash themselves. They're going to smash their lives. It's going to affect other people. You're going to be minding your own business in your libertarian fantasy, and one of these truck drivers crazed out on meth is going to smash his truck into you and ruin your whole life. And you're going to say, why this happened? And it was, butterfly effect. It's because you didn't care enough to give basic income to that trucker. And, not directly, but things are connected. I really think there are people that think things aren't connected, and that I'm a self-made man and I made $1 million running this trucking company. Well, it was the roads. It was the demand of the people for the products. I mean, everything connected allowed you to make that $1 million. Everything connected allowed you to be a big capitalist. I mean, it's this complexity. There is no self-made man. But go ahead,
being
Josh.
Being a Bitcoiner, Thomas, I think the exploration, at least, of a blockchain solution is interesting. Because for me, the scariest thing about a UBI is that a central authority has full control over the money and who gets it and can turn it off and this and that. The problem with the blockchain solution,
we're not talking about turning. I mean, it doesn't seem to me like, I agree there's a complexity in a system like welfare where you have to qualify for the system, and some people don't qualify. So we always have to say, do you qualify or do you not qualify?
Yeah.
The UBI I'm talking about, as from a machine perspective or from a bureaucracy perspective, everybody gets 1,000. So yeah, there's some problem if people die. They keep getting 1,000. That's a problem. If people are not really born, they're like fake births or something, there's a problem there. But in the middle, I just think you just keep giving them money. I mean, they can spend it on bullets. They do what they want. I don't really care. So
sure, the billionaires could burn it and it would be good for everyone.
Good for everybody. Yeah.
Why not reduce tax instead of do the UBI? I mean,
it's not as equal. Taxes are paid in an unequal curve so that you could give it back to everyone, and then you still wouldn't have the same effect of helping anyone, or you'd help the people that pay the tax. And then it comes down to trickle down economics or voodoo economics, or if you believe that giving the money to the billionaire is the same as giving the money to the truck driver, when you know the truck driver is going to spend it every month on food, and then the billionaire, you just don't know what he's going to do with it. Just generally because he doesn't have the same economic incentives that the truck driver has.
Well, he'll probably hire a truck driver.
Sure. To do what? But but yeah, I know. I mean, and then, people are saying in the chat, yes, give the money back to the people that work. But a lot of our wealth system is predicated on having wealth. Taking the president as an example, if you start on second base and you steal third, it's impressive you're on third base, but you started on second. Like, we can't deny this, that there's something about wealth, and some people in Bitcoin know this, and I went downhill, but once you get larger numbers, you start rolling larger numbers. And these people with the companies like Warren Buffett started out with 10 shares, got 100 shares, got 1,000 shares. And again, he got it through his own work and everything, all these things. But if he started out rolling with 1,000 shares already, it would be easier for him to get to 10,000 shares. That's all I'm saying.
So what if you did have a blockchain that released $1,000 worth of X, and it becomes the currency because it's releasing 1,000, credits to everyone. You do have the Sybil attack problem, but you have that in a centralized system too, and you could somehow solve that with, circles of trust or something, saying, hey, this person's had a baby. Yes, 5 people have confirmed it, or whatever. So some sort of,
well, they have that great software now. It can make all those fake pictures. They keep showing me on Twitter. They're like, 4 of these 5 people are computer generated.
Oh,
so you can even make, it's pretty impressive. They can make fake pictures of people that never existed. So yeah, I don't think the blockchain improves it or doesn't improve it. I think if it was a more complicated system, if you had to prove anything, but I'm just basically talking.
But it takes away the tyranny aspect, which is very, very real, Thomas.
The tyranny they're saying in the chat is that we take anyone's money and we redistribute it to anyone else. They're back on this basic, all government is tyranny, all tax is tyranny, all things lead to complete, uniforms and all these kind of things. Taking that part out, I think it's a pretty one-to-one. Automation of cars is going to wipe out drivers. Universal basic income could save them. Again, it doesn't matter what I say. We were just watching Vice, which is a fantastic movie. Everyone should check out Vice. Maybe even if you're not Republican, you'll like it. I don't know. But it talks about Bush and Cheney and the Iraq War, and when Colin Powell went up there and threatened everyone with his little vial of anthrax. And I said right away, well, that's obviously not a vial of anthrax. And the way he was speaking, his heart was not in it. But that led us down that whole path. And I screamed about it live and everything. Well, I can scream all I want about, universal basic income and the harms that are going to come from automation, but the automation is going to come anyway. Just like the MP3 wiped out the music industry, the internet and streaming is wiping out movies, and now Bitcoin, in my own belief, is wiping out money. In the same way, automation's coming. We're going to need basic income. People in the chat say it's stealing. Again, it's about, I don't know. It's just how high can we stack the bodies outside your house before you're tired of us stacking bodies?
But I guess what I'm saying is, instead of forcing one central authority and asking them to collectively say this is the new currency that everyone gets 1,000 of, to have a neutral digital entity that does that, and redistribute. Why not, right? Because all you're doing is taking the human out of that, just like Bitcoin took the human out of the central banks. we don't need the human forcing everyone. I mean, there are a lot of problems to be solved, and it's not solved. But theoretically, I think that's a much better idea to have a basic income than to have some sort of man-made, centrally controlled currency. Again, that's the basic income.
I think that part of the problem is that we're in a real world where we have pragmatic problems. So the easiest thing in our current solution would be to just pay people directly under the current system. Mr. Yang has even said one of the things that the government's really good at actually is sending out checks. We have an incredible efficiency at sending out checks. The IRS does it. The government pays people. All these other things, they're just the bonds. They're really good at sending out checks. So that's an efficiency that we have.
I'm really good at driving too.
Also, it's just because we have to solve these problems in the real world in the time that we have allotted, and that time is clicking forward, and that we're already in a system where people do give up money and redistribute it. Right now, we redistribute it to military means. We redistribute it to legal enforcement of other laws that I disagree with, all kinds of other things that I disagree with. But I'm not saying that we should just throw the baby out with the bathwater. Unfortunately, we have to bootstrap. We have to interface with the current system before we can transition to a better system or whatever. And some of that transition does happen through technology. When something like Bitcoin comes in my mind, it's taken away the government monopoly on money printing, and even taken it away so much that I give the monopoly completely to Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin now has monopoly on money printing. One of the best things it does is not print the money, which is going to have its own effects on society, which I've talked about here. Good, we get rid of war. Bad, we get rid of disaster recovery and relief. These are now going to have to be paid for. We can't just print it. But we are still in the printing paradigm. Oh, somebody dropped. But it's all about can we reduce harms? So
I mean, it'd be an interesting thought experiment, guys, to see if there was a blockchain where everybody had a wallet from birth somehow. What would happen to inflation if every single wallet got 1,000 credits every week or every month? I mean, every single person. Imagine in Bitcoin, if every single Bitcoin address or every single person somehow got a new Bitcoin, what would happen? Like instead of having a curve where Bitcoin just stops getting printed, if the blockchain just kept on at a regular pace. And we did have a coin really early on, like when Litecoin was just starting out, and it was called Flycoin. And it was called a demurrage coin, where it would, if you hodled, it would redistribute itself out. So you had to like move the coins. Anyway, there was some really interesting economic theory behind it. Of course, it pumped with the hype and then dumped as the fact that everyone didn't want to hold something that's losing value.
And people immediately started writing software to move their money from wallet to wallet to satisfy the goals of to break the system. I mean,
yeah, right. And so, it would be interesting to see what would happen in an environment where there is this quite a large inflation of money in a true UBI. And anyway, I'm a big fan of definite experimentation. I'm just not a big fan of centralized control over that experimentation.
But again, we as a pragmatist, as a real world person, we have the problems we have the tools we have the solutions available to us. It's better to do something than to do nothing, but that's debatable, right? That's a big debate, and I think we had a fun time talking about it today. Let's check in on the price of Bitcoin. Looks like it's still 38.44, about the same, I'd say. Unchanged, although let's zoom in some more, make it more exciting. Oh, it's definitely going up. Look at that. You can see here with the doji candles and the skyscrapers here, we have the inverted pyramid. If you put the triangle on there, I think we're ready to go right here. So there you go. Just ignore that waterfall. Ignore that waterfall. There's no waterfall there. But we talked about a lot of stuff. We talked about
looks like a blood fall.
It does look like a blood fall. We talked about Warren Buffett. Bitcoin's a delusion and it attracts charlatans. We talked about Venezuela, where Bitcoin is more than just a speculative asset.
Look at that charlatan.
Obviously, another faker right there. And we talked about some charts, and transactions are growing for Bitcoin. That's good. Roger Ver is shilling altcoins and ICOs. Or I mean, he's just shilling ICOs. I don't want to. I guess he's also shilling Bcash. That's an altcoin. But we talked about the Lightning Torch, Lightning Network, tipping.me, custodial systems. We don't need that. Yeah, they're saying in the chat, we talked about Bitcoin having a Florida problem, and then we talked a lot about universal basic income. We talked about libertarianism, socialism, pragmatism, all kinds of different ideas here. I hope you guys like it. Give us a thumbs up and a share. Check us out. Subscribe down below. We've got this Bitcoin donation address right here on your screen if you'd like to donate to the World Crypto Network. We're trying to raise $1 million. We could do it through small donations, or you could just send the whole million right here. You could just go ahead and fat finger that thing. I meant to send 100,000, but whoopsie, I sent 1 million. That would be sweet. Also, you can sign up at patreon.com/madbitcoins to support us. We have 38 patrons donating $219 a month. So you can donate as much as like $5 or $2, $10 a month to help support the show. Also want to give Dan and Josh a chance to talk here. Dan, where can people find out more about Crypto Raptor, what you got going on?
Forget about me. I'd say go and just learn something new about Bitcoin. If you haven't set up a Lightning node, set one up. Just do something cool, or whether it's create a meme, and I'll come up with something cool to look at about me soon. But the other thing is, just want to say a quick thank you to Jeremy for religiously doing all the time stamping. I really appreciate that. That's absolutely epic of you. And also that, and Tom's just getting it up on screen in a second, by the looks of it, which is the CoinFest is on in Manchester, UK. If you're from the UK, it's a free conference. It's pretty darn cool. In fact, when we can probably, there you go, you can see the logo there for my logo because I'll be like singing stuff there. I've got a few little tricks up my sleeve. But yeah, that tipping that was on a minute ago, drop a few sats in there for Tom's trip to the UK for the Manchester conference. That would be awesome. And yeah, and then I'll catch you guys on Friday for the Bitcoin talk group. And thanks everyone for your time and listening to us. And especially me.
Like Dan said, you can donate now to the Tally Coin, but we are going to try to go to CoinFest UK April 4th, 5th, and 6th, Manchester, United Kingdom, right there. So like Dan was saying, it's apparently a free conference. How about that? A free conference. You don't even have to pay to get dinner or anything. You just pay for your own food. But check it out. It's a free conference, CoinFest UK in Manchester. We put the link in the chat. So if you guys are planning a trip out there, if you live nearby, it's going to be super fun. I would say pretty much like 90% chance that I'll be there. It's going to be excellent. Yes. So yeah, a lot of people have been donating behind the scenes. Thanks so much to those donors out there who've been doing kind of a matching donation fund to help me get a plane ticket over there. But the same thing that we did at the other conferences, we'll be trying to do here. We'll try to interview everybody we can, talk to as many people, get as many fun interviews for you, check out some museums, all the other kind of things. CoinFest UK, beginning of April. And we're going to be talking more about World Crypto Network plans for the future, how you can help out, how you can get involved, and basically trying to put out a schedule of what we would do this year if we had the donations. And the part of that will be, we'll say like, hey, we'll go to Hodl Hodl, we'll go to Breaking Bitcoin, we'll do interviews, we'll put them on the internet for free. This is our plan. How can you guys help? How can you donate? Maybe we'll get sponsors for those videos. Whatever we have to do to make it happen. But that's our plan for 2019, covering Bitcoin out there on the road. Josh, tell us about Vaultoro. What are you guys up to lately?
Well, first of all, I want to say, come on, all you ANCAPs out there, prove Thomas wrong that you will donate, that people voluntarily help out in a community. Great people, you know. I really find it amazing work that you've done, Thomas, over the years, and I applaud you. Vaultoro, we are the oldest running. Well, we are still the only Bitcoin physical gold exchange. Screw fiat. Why use a fiat exchange? Fiat. The exchanges hold their money in the banks. Those banks usually freeze the accounts. They don't tell anyone. Exchanges tend to go into these like panic modes and little mini Ponzi schemes as they try to find a new banking partner. No one knows what's happening yet. Then usually maybe they do, maybe they don't. It's a very scary world. I know the world of the exchanges in the background, and this is very, very often happens. But also the fact that banks speculate with the money that exchanges are holding. So not only is your money sitting there on the exchange and you're speculating within the crazy crypto world, but the bank's also speculating with crazy. And we saw the world's biggest bank, JP Morgan, sorry, not JP Morgan. We saw Merrill Lynch, of course, go down, and you know, these things happen. And if you've been keeping an eye on Europe, you're also seeing bank disasters happening there. So this is why we started Vaultoro. We also started the Glass Books protocol to make it the most transparent exchange in the world. All gold is fully audited and fully insured, and you can just trade it back to Bitcoin anytime, like a normal order book. And that's great because you can insure gold, which is, you know, banks are only insured to 100K, but you can insure gold to how much you've got because it's just there. It's just sitting in a vault, and it's fully allocated in your name as your legal property. So that's what we do. You can also check me out on Twitter at Vaultoro. That's Vault as in a gold vault, and Oro, which is Spanish for gold, for those that don't know Spanish.
Ole!
Ole!
All right. Thanks so much, Josh. And you guys can check out Vaultoro. Good stuff. You can buy gold there and do the Bitcoin thing. I want to thank our two donors today. We had a donor 0.00365784 and donor 0.00260135. And I hope everybody liked today's show. Give us a thumbs up and a share. Remember, we're talking about hot button, exciting issues. A lot of people have strong opinions on whether or not we should have basic income, whether or not we should even pay taxes at all. All of these kind of ideas, we're trying to talk about them here in a fair way where we can have both sides and everyone can get their opinion out. I want to thank Jeff for calling. Thank everybody for chatting with us in the chat. And we'll be back next week for another Monday morning Bitcoin talk show. Until next time, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.